Happy Sabbath, friends! Welcome to our King of Me children's stories. In this series, we're learning, through different Bible stories, the importance of making God the King of our lives. Our memory verse is found in Revelation chapter 17, verse 14. Let's look at it together. The Lamb will defeat them, because He is the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. One more time. Revelation chapter 17 and verse 14. The Lamb will defeat them, because He is Lord of Lords and King of Kings. Get ready for this week's stories, kiddies, which is Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. The Israelites were traveling the desert on their way to the land God had promised to them. They left Egypt under the leadership of Moses, a servant of the Lord. The Israelites had seen God's hand of protection over them and had received God's law, the 10 Commandments. It was written on 2 stone tablets and placed inside the Ark of the Covenant. After Moses had died, the Lord said to a young man named Joshua, "My servant Moses is no more. Now, Joshua, you will lead my people. Go across the Jordan River and into the land that I have promised you. Joshua, just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. Be strong, be brave. Be sure to obey all the teachings my servant Moses has given you. If you follow them exactly, you will be successful in everything you do." Joshua followed God's commands, and he knew that God would grant them the victory. But in order to enter the promised land, God's people would first have to conquer the city of Jericho, which was ruled by an evil king. So Joshua secretly sent out 2 spies to go and look closely at the city. Once the men went into Jericho to look around, someone told the king, "2 men from Israel have come here to spy on our land." The 2 spies knew they had to hide, but where? Then a woman named Rahab called the 2 men into her house, which was built on the city wall. Rahab hid the 2 men on her roof, so the king and his soldiers could not find them. Later on, Rahab told the men, "I know the Lord has given this land to your people. We are afraid, because we have heard how the Lord has helped you. We heard how He dried up the Red Sea when you came out of the land of Egypt. I ask you to please make me a promise before the Lord. Promise that you will show kindness to my family and myself, just as I have showed you kindness today." The men agreed. They said, "Rahab, do not tell anyone what we are doing. When the Lord gives us this land, we will be kind to you. You may trust us." Rahab then used a red rope to let down the men through a window. The men said to her, "You see this rope you are using to help us escape? When we return to this land of Jericho, you must tie the rope in the window. Then everyone who is in this house will be safe." Rahab agreed and thanked the men. After they left, she tied the red rope in the window. The men then went to Joshua. They told him everything that had happened to them while they were in Jericho. Joshua knew that despite the struggles ahead, God would grant them the victory. Early the next morning, Joshua and all the people of Israel traveled to the river Jordan. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Tell the priests to carry the Ark of the Covenant ahead of the people and into this river. When they enter the water, the river will stop flowing." Then the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant, which had the 10 Commandments inside, came to the edge of the Jordan River and stepped into the water. Just at that moment, the water stopped flowing. The ground became dry. The priests carried the Ark of the Covenant to the middle of the river and stopped. They waited there while all the people of Israel walked across. They crossed the Jordan River on dry land, just as they previously did the Red Sea. The priests carried the Ark of the Covenant out of the river. As soon as their feet touched dry land, the water began to flow again. The river again overflowed its banks. It was just as it was before they had crossed. Joshua and the Israelites then approached the city of Jericho. Now the people of Jericho were afraid because the Israelites were oh so near. They closed up their city gates and guarded them. No one went into the city, and no one came out. Suddenly, Joshua looked up, and he saw a man standing in front of him. The man had a sword in his hand. He said to Joshua, "I am a commander in the Lord's army." Then Joshua bowed face down on the ground. He asked, "Does my master have a command for me?" The commander of the Lord's army answered, "Take off your sandals, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground." So Joshua did. Then he said to Joshua, "Look, the Lord is giving you Jericho, its king, and all its soldiers. You must now march around the entire city every day. Have 7 priests blowing their trumpets, marching in front, and the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant, following behind them. Armed soldiers are to walk behind the Ark of the Covenant. Do this every day for 6 days. But on the 7th day, march around the city 7 times. And on that day, when the priests blow their trumpets, have all the people give a loud shout. Then the walls of the city will fall." Joshua called the priests, soldiers, and all the Israelites together. He told them what the Lord instructed them to do. He told the priests to carry the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, and 7 other priests to carry trumpets and march in front of it. Then Joshua ordered the people, "Now go, march around the city. The armed soldiers should walk behind the Ark of the Covenant. God will grant us the victory." And so that is what they did. The 7 priests began marching before the Lord. They carried the 7 trumpets and blew them as they marched. The priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant followed behind them. The armed soldiers with weapons marched behind the Ark of the Covenant. The priests were blowing their trumpets, but Joshua had told the people not to give a war cry. He said, "Do not shout. Do not utter a single word until the day I tell you. On that day you will shout." Joshua and the Israelites marched once around the city of Jericho every day, then went back to camp for the night. They repeated this for 6 days. On the 7th day, Joshua and the Israelites got up at dawn to march, just as they did on the days before. But on this particular day, they marched around the city 7 times. The 7th time around the city, as the priests were about to blow their trumpets, Joshua gave the command, "Now shout, the Lord has given you this city." Then when the priests blew their trumpets, all the people shouted. At the sound of the trumpets and the people's shouts, the walls of Jericho came tumbling down. Everyone ran into the city, and the Israelites conquered and defeated the city of Jericho. Rahab and her family were spared because of the kindness she had shown. God had kept his word. He gave his people the land he had promised to them. God had granted his people the victory. Remember, kids, God always keeps his word. I want you to know that even when all the odds are against you, if you keep the faith, just like Joshua, God will grant you the victory. How can he not? He's God after all. And if you make him king of your life, there's nothing that he won't do for you. My God is the King of Victories, and my God is King of me.
The king of the giants, my God's the king of the lions, my God's the king of the creatures of the deep, my God's the king of me. Have you heard the story about my friend King Dave? wouldn't let the giant stand in his way. He said, hand me my sling, cause he's not that tall. My God is bigger and I watch him fall. My God's the king of the giants. My God's the king of the lions. My God's the king of the creatures of the deep. My God's the king of me. Have you heard the one about this guy called Dan? Yes, he was a mighty holy praying man. They said throw him to the den of the scary beasts, but God saved a hero from the lion's teeth. Yeah! My God's the king of the giants. My God's the king of the lions. My God's the king of the creatures of the deep. My God's the king of me. This is more than history. He will do the same for me, like Jonah and the whale at sea. When I'm lost and afraid, all alone in the dark, you're with me. Oh, you're with me. My God's the king of the giants. My God's the king of the lions. My God's the king of the creatures of the deep. My God's the king of me. My God's the king of the giants. My God's the king of the lions. My God's the king of the creatures of the deep. My God's the king of me. My God's the king of me.